You're listening to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast. I'm your host, Nadine Bozeman. In this podcast, I'm sharing business systems and strategies specifically tailored to the bridal sewing industry so you can build your own modern and profitable bridal alterations business. Join me as I also get to chat with fellow seamstresses and share their personal success stories. I'm so glad you're here and that we can grow together in this unique trade. Welcome back to another episode of Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress. And I'm kind of like fangirling today because I'm so excited to be here with Rachael Peterson. She is the owner of Heming and Fitz, and you may recognize that name I think early on, like 2019, we were talking about this before we started recording. They were kind of like the before and after OGs where they would like time lapse, like pinning the dresses, and then you'd see the dresses like magically like fit and then like the big reveal. So I feel like you've been around since the beginning of seamstresses entering the Instagram scene. So I'm so excited to like finally be talking to you and hearing the story. And so give us the story behind Heming and Fitz. Let's start there.
Heming and Fitz was born a little bit out of necessity. I was actually working for Maggie Sotero at the time.
Wow.
They have a corporate location in Salt Lake City, and that's where they do all their, they get their samples to it, and then they do sample edits. They have a huge warehouse, and it was so fun. I loved it. I only worked there for a month, so I can't really claim that I worked for Maggie, but
originally 30 days. They still count.
But I was just bottom of the totem pole and hand sewing all the time because that's what they needed for these sample changes. And I was like, I'm not using any of my skills. This isn't very fun. And I would just have panic attacks every night before I went in because I was like, I hate being locked in knowing I have to be there for 8 hours a day doing exactly what they want.
Yeah.
There was also a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. And so I was like, I think that I can just do this on my own. And I think I could make as much money as I'm making here and be a lot more calm. And so I just I literally took a sick day from working at Maggie, and I went around through Salt Lake City and just knocked doors and went into bridal shops and was like, hey, this is what I do. I've been doing bridal alterations for 3 years or however long I was doing it at the time. And I was like, would you ever refer clients to me? And I had I had written down an actual list on a notepad of all the stores that I could go visit. And I just remember scratching them all off, and nobody gave me a chance except one shop. And literally
one. Oh my gosh.
This is how they gave me the chance to, which I'm so grateful. We still work so closely with them and we love them. But the manager at the time, he was he holds such a near and dear place in my heart. We still hang out. And he's like, well, maybe we'll give you a sewing test, and if you do well, then we'll start referring clients to you. And so they gave me this dress that was not selling in their store. Mm-hmm. And he's like, just make it better.
Oh my gosh.
I know, which is a crazy thing a crazy ask. And so it was
it's more than a sewing test. It's redesign this and make it sell. Okay.
Yeah, totally. And it was machine beaded, all of it. And it was super dirty on the inside, no enclosed seams. And it was this weird turtleneck machine beaded dress. And so anyway, we revamped it, and then they started referring clients to us. And that's when we started posting, because I've always loved video. I did video in high school. I was part of the video club, and I've just always loved it. And so I just knew that there could be some fascination with what was going on there. Mm-hmm. So I started posting very kind of basic before and afters, what we were talking about. Yeah. And then within a year and a half, all those shops that I had reached out to had then come and reached back out to me asking if they could refer clients to me.
Oh, so it was a Pretty Woman moment.
Yeah. It was a full circle thing. It was really cool. And
that is so funny. Yeah. Okay. So pre Maggie Sotero, when did you start sewing?
My mom taught me a ton because she's a quilter.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And so she had machines that I would use, and my dad's a thrifter and very creative in woodworking. And so he would go to thrift stores looking for things for his projects, little machines from fans that he could use for these things that he makes arrows with. And so I just go
funny and random.
So random. I just tag along to the thrift store with him and get thrifted items and then go home and revamp them.
It's so fun for that age. You know what I mean? Because it's you can finish things and then make it your own and whatever. Yeah.
And they can be silly goofy. You wear them for a year and then you grow out of them anyway. And so you don't have to wear them anymore.
Yeah, so it was like a young like an appreciation from a young age of sewing. And then like bridal, was that like once you were an adult, like, oh, I can make money sewing bridal, or how did you get into that piece?
Sewing was always something that I loved so
Mm.
much that I was like, if I could make money sewing, I would do that and nothing else.
Mhm.
And then but I just didn't know if you could make enough money doing that to
Yeah.
live off of. And I didn't wanna go to college, but my parents were like, "No, you should go to college." Mostly because a lot of people get stuck in my hometown in California, and that's
Oh.
fine. Like, a lot of people choose to stay in their hometown, and that's fine, but if you get stuck, it's another thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just go try it. So I came to Utah and tried college for, like, 3 semesters, and, like, halfway through my 3rd semester, I called my parents and I was like, "Hey, like, I think I'm gonna drop out." And they're like, "Well, why do you wanna do that?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm failing all my classes and I haven't been in 3 weeks." And my dad was like, "Well, it sounds like you made your decision." But by that time, I was in my 2nd semester at college. I had already started working at a local bridal shop, and at
Oh,
that
okay.
you were a consultant, you were a seamstress, you did everything, like, the second a bride walks in the store, they're yours until they leave,
Oh,
so you,
wow.
like, walk them through the whole process. It definitely wasn't the most efficient thing, but nothing at that shop was the most efficient thing. Anyway, but
No,
it
that
gave me, like,
sounds
a
like a
taste
lot.
of it.
Like, I could never imagine selling well, maybe I could imagine selling brides dresses, but then I don't know, like, I just feel like that yeah, 2 totally separate jobs, so
But you would do so good at it now because you know what not to tell them is possible.
yes, I know. Yeah, 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 but,
You
like,
have to steer
jumping
them
in,
maybe
it's
towards
like,
what they want.
okay, yeah.
Yep,
So,
totally.
like, your entrepreneurship, it sounds like started when you're pretty young. I mean, you look super young even now, so I don't know how old you are, but, like, when you were walking around with your notebook,
Yeah,
like, what kind of challenges did you face? Well, one of them was probably not many of them gave you a shot initially until they saw
yeah.
you get famous. But what other roadblocks came up because you think maybe because of your age?
I think that was probably the biggest one is there it's just hard to develop, like, a very quick trust with someone when you look young,
Mhm.
especially if they have no concept of what you can do, and at that
Yeah.
time, like, I didn't even know what I could do, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
But then there was a moment where, like, after I'd started my business and I already had shops referring to me, I was working from my house, and I would, like, go and answer the door for a client. I'm, like, living with all my girlfriends at this time. It's like they're out of college, and there's, like, 5 of us in a house, and I'm, like, doing fittings from the front room and sewing in the basement, and I would, like, answer the door, and they'd be like, "Hi, is your mom here? We're here for alterations." Like, all the time. That has happened all. But that's just more of a funny thing. I think that once you start, like, talking with the bride and kind of discussing what to be done on their dress, I think that they quickly realize, like, whether or not you, like, know what you're talking about, and
Mhm.
so I don't feel like it's really held me back in too many ways other than that, like, first initial thing, but that was probably good because then it made me work for it
Yeah.
and humbled me and also just, like, gave me something to work for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And how connected do you feel like you are with other wedding pros in your area? Not just like seamstresses, but like have you felt like did it take a while to get into like the wedding industry community in your area or how was that?
That's an interesting question because I feel really connected with the shops here and also with other seamstresses. Like, there's, like, my local gals who I can refer people to if it's not something that
Mhm.
we take on, or if I'm, like, questioning something, I'm like, "Does this look right to you?" Like, I can text them photos and stuff,
Yeah.
but as far as other wedding pros go, I feel like maybe now that we've started our consignment shop, now we've started to get to know, like, florists and wedding vendor or event
Yeah, like planners. Yeah.
oh, planners, and then
Mhm.
what am I looking for?
Venues.
Venue.
Venues,
Thank
yeah.
you, venue owners and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think
Because
previously
then
to that
you're like more ahead of like the planning process. So like you're like one of the first stops as opposed to sometimes we're like later in the game as seamstresses.
yes, no,
Yeah.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
feel like now we're, beginning to get a little bit more connected, but we definitely follow a lot of pros locally, so if someone asks us like, "Hey, I need a florist," like, I can search in the people I follow and have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
recommendations, but like you're saying, we're pretty late in the process. Like,
Mhm.
they'll come to us, like, 3 to 4 months before their wedding, and
Yeah.
most everything is planned at that point, or they have
Yeah.
someone in mind for what they want. So, we
Yeah.
should be more connected, I think.
It's kind of hard. It's hard to like leave the sewing room. You know what I'm saying? So
It is.
okay, so we touched on this a little bit before we hit record about how you've used social media to help leverage your growth, and maybe like you made a really funny comment before recording how like you wished that you knew how to leverage it sooner. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you're like, "Wow, this totally took off. Like I wish I had known what to do with it or like how important it was." So like, because some people can be like, okay, well, social media is just kind of like an extra thing. And honestly, like that's how I feel like I am currently with my Sweet Francis account. It's like, okay, you know what I mean? Well, I am booked, so I don't really need to be like super, but like it is important. So let's talk about that and how your social media handles grew and then how that affected your business.
Yeah. Well, kind of how we discussed when Heming and Fitz began, that was the only reason we got more shops interested in us is
Mm,
like we had one shop give us a chance, and then by posting, other people were like, "Oh, she does know what she's doing. We can send
mhm.
people to her. We can trust her," and that trust grows. And I think it's just been really interesting to watch it evolve because there will be months where I go without posting, and it's honestly so peaceful. It's so serene when you're not worried about social media. But there's also no growth there when you're not working on it, and so we've just gone through a couple phases of, like, for, like, probably the first 2 or 3 years, it was just before and afters, before and afters. There was no personality in it. There was no, like, me talking to the camera in it, which was, like, kind of what social media was calling for at the time.
Right, right.
And now I feel like brands are much more successful when they do have, like, a personality tied to them, when they have, like, the owner tied to it and promoting it a little bit more. And so
Right.
just recently, we've started doing a little bit more of, like, our sewing process videos and giving some advice, and also just, like, when people message in, even if they're never gonna be a client of ours, sometimes people will send us photos and be like, "Hey, is this possible for this dress?" And
Oh,
just
wow.
instead of DMing and answering, I'll just like hop on and answer it on a video so that way if someone else is having that question, they can
Yeah.
know what's possible, what to ask the local seamstress, etc.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that has been what's like so we were stuck at 9,000 followers for all of last year. And the thing that got us to 9,000 was like one single video that got us like from 7,000 to 9,000. Then we were stuck at 9,000 for a whole year. And that's the thing that broke us out of that and got us to 12,000 was when we started, like, sharing more interests,
Oh,
sharing
yeah.
more tidbits. Anyway, so that's been really interesting to watch how social media will continue to evolve, and as you evolve with what it's calling for, that's what's gonna keep you relevant, and that's what's gonna
Yeah.
it's also really interesting how many of our clients come into us and they're like some of them are direct shop referrals where they're like, "The shop told us to come to you, they didn't give me anyone else's name." And
Mhm.
some people are like, "They gave me a list of people, nobody else had any social media, so I chose to come to you." And some people are like, "Yeah, I didn't know who to go to, and I was just searching on social media and I found you, and I just, like, love your videos and trust what you guys are capable of." And so it's just been
Yeah.
like probably 60 to 70% of our clients have looked through our Instagram and have already developed a trust with us prior to coming in and chatting with us, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, and they already, like, know okay, they know that you're young, so that they won't be asking you, like, where your mom is, so that also
Totally.
helps. But that's so
Totally.
cool that you've been, like that you're aware of the changes and, like, okay, like, this is kind of we don't wanna be, like, a slave to the algorithm, but also just being aware of, like, okay, this is kind of what's necessary, and I know, like, ideally, none of us really wanna get our face out there because it's like, "Okay, gotta" but, like, that connection is built. So it's like, I mean, it takes a few seconds to plan, like, okay, I'm just going to pop on my stories really quick or whatever, but it makes an impact. And I'm trying to get better at like, okay, behind the scenes stuff, or like if I'm sewing, like I am the worst at like when I'm sewing, like I don't pull up my phone. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm in the zone. I have my audiobook on. So I'm like, oh, okay, now I got to hit pause and blah, blah.
Yes,
But
that's the worst is when you can't listen to your book because you're using your phone very
like, so it's like, okay, but I know that it's like worth it. So I'm just trying to, and then the next step is to like get a folder in my phone and like actually organize the content. Cause right
Yeah.
now it's like just months back where I'm like, oh yeah, I made that. Oh yeah, ooh, so one step
Yeah.
at a time, get the content and then I can organize it another day. So
Yep.
so yeah, if you're listening, we'll have a link to the Instagrams so you can kind of get inspired of like what to post or maybe look back and see the evolution. So I'm thinking of like that the mirror was that at your home when you're or when did you move out to your storefront or whatever? or
Yes,
your
the mirror in the corner, that
yeah.
was my house. That was actually my
Oh.
3rd location for the business
Mm.
because I had COVID. I had to move so many times during COVID.
Oh gosh. Just
But
add to
that
the
was
stress of the pandemic.
yeah,
Moving.
that's where we were for like a year and a half, and then I had started hiring people, and I was like, "I don't mind having them work at my house, but it's not the most comfy environment for them to be
Yeah.
in."
Yeah.
And so then we moved to a small retail space, and we only had probably like 800 square feet of working space. And then we had started collecting dresses for our consignment shop, and
Yes.
like had a storage unit sitting in the parking lot for like the better part of 6 months
Whoa.
until we could find a bigger place to get into so that way we could display them because there was absolutely no place that we could display them in our first
Yeah.
retail location. So we were only there for a year, and then we moved into this location that we have here, which I think that we have like maybe 2,800 square feet now, which is
Wow.
way bigger. So we have
That's
3 fitting
huge.
rooms now. We have a really big area in the center for displaying dresses, and then we have a large room in the back for more dresses, and then our second large room in the back is for our sewing room. And then we
Mhm.
have like a front space and then the break room that we're in. I got lost in a tangent because
Oh.
I forget what you asked me.
That's okay, 'cause I kinda got sidetracked because I was like, "Ooh, I wanna talk about hiring," because we kinda breezed over that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
there were, like, a couple really good nuggets in there. So, first of all, I love that you and I wanna hear more, but I love that you grew where you were without the pressure of, like, "Okay, I'm just gonna move out and then hope that I can pay the bills and fill
Right.
up the schedule." Like, you kinda built your team, which is not super common to hear of, like, building your team from home first. But it
Yeah.
sounds like you were like, "Okay, I wanna make sure that we can do this before I invest in, like, property," which is really wise of you. So where did you find your employees, and how did you talk them into working from your house?
It was such a blessing. I have so the 2 employees that I hired first, Claire and Ashlyn, my sewers,
Yeah,
they are
I
both
saw them
family.
earlier today. Yes.
Yeah.
Saw their backs, so that's what
Yeah, they're actually both family friends. So Ashlyn is my best friend's little sister. And my best friend, we started sewing together at this first bridal shop, and then Claire is kind of an extension friend of that family. And both of them are currently in school and have been since we began. And I think I hired them in 2021. So I did it by myself for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then so yeah, they were starting college, starting school, which was perfect because
It
then in
is.
their summer break, they can work really, really hard, do like full-time hours. And then in off season, I just give them what I can. I
Yeah.
do what I can and so they can focus on school. So it works out really
Yeah.
well.
I mean, it's perfect because, like, that trust factor was already there. Like, we
Yeah.
need friends who sew, but they're kinda hard to find.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
like, Claire's doing fashion school, so, like, Claire sews all day, every day.
Yeah.
Uh, and Ashlyn grew up with Ashlyn's mom is a quilter as well, and so they grew up sewing, and so it just, like, worked
Wow.
out, and they're both incredibly talented.
Wow, good for you. So, a year and a half in, and then after you hired 2 employees, how did your, like, workload grow? Was there a point where you're like, "Okay, I hope more dresses come in so I can actually keep paying them," or how did that balance out?
Right, I think that was another benefit of them being college students. It was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a base amount of this many hours. That's how many I can promise you, and then if we have extra
Mhm.
work beyond that, I would love for you to help me out, but it's never gonna be a sure thing." And that's how we did it for,
Yeah.
like, the first year,
Yeah.
um,
That's so
after which
ideal.
yeah. After
Seriously.
which point we knew how busy we were gonna be, and I knew that I would need them full time through the summer. But honestly, about 6 months after I hired the 2 of them, I hired my 3rd, which is Haley, and Haley does all of our customer facing stuff. She does all of our emails, all of our calls, all of our fittings, and she's
And
incredible.
fittings. Oh my goodness. That's a
Yeah,
lot of trust. Okay. Yeah.
yes, she's incredible. She took some sewing classes in college, so she's graduated, she has a bachelor's degree. She did a lot of classes around sewing and a lot around fashion. So she
Mhm.
does sew. She doesn't sew as much, but she's, like, incredible with people,
Yeah.
and it was like a no-brainer if that's the place to put her because she just shines so brightly in that spot.
Well, that's so great because it sounds like everything was, like, super organic, like you
Yeah,
have this perfect little team around you.
totally.
And that's what's so hard because I think a lot of people I've heard, and with just, like, one-on-one coaching or whatever, people wanting to hire, and it is so ideal when it can be, like, people that you know or you just kind of already have a relationship with, and, like, some
Yeah,
areas are just we don't have like a fashion or design school near me. So sometimes I hear that like, oh, just go to like your local trade school. It's like, okay, well, we have
Yeah.
nothing. We wouldn't be able to pull anybody from there,
Yeah.
So
Tough.
like there is kind of a certain extent of like the right people in the right place at the right time. Like to a certain extent, you can plan of how you want to hire.
Yeah. It's like the whims of the world. The wind has to be blowing in the right direction for you to get the right people.
Seriously though, like I don't know. So but either way, it's still like super brave for you to take people on because it's like then you have to pay them, then you have to like count on like dresses still coming in, or you know what I mean? And no, so how
Yeah.
is your wedding season like year long? Or do you
No.
have a break? Okay.
We
It's
have a
not Utah
is
because you have
yours year
beautiful
long?
winters. No, no, we
Okay.
have like a very distinct break between like I'd say like end of November through at least February.
I think ours is very similar. Sometimes ours starts a little bit earlier because we
Hmm.
have like pretty snowy winters, but then when
That's what I
everything snows,
thought.
nothing's green and
But
no
isn't
one
it
here wants to do a
pretty
wedding.
now? Okay.
I don't know. It's like few and far between. We always have
Okay.
a really, really super big rush right around New Year's of like, we decided we're going to elope at New Year's. We need a dress altered.
Yeah.
And that for some reason is like when we have like our little peak in our off season. But other than that, yeah, we usually like
Yeah.
start picking up in February and then start dying off around like October.
Yeah. 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 Like when it gets like just cold and kind of dreary. But around here, it's not even really pretty and white. It's just like rainy. So like yeah, there's
Oh,
mostly wedding action up here.
yeah,
Okay. So
that's
before I do want to get into the consignment piece, but I wanted to ask you about like recently you were featured on some kind of local news event.
it was Good Things Utah, which is I honestly didn't even know what it was until we got on it. But like I was talking to my roommate about it and she's like, "You're gonna be on Good Things Utah? Like I watched that all the time growing up."
That's probably
So
like New Day Seattle. Like, yes, it's
yeah,
like a daytime news. Like they like feature businesses and
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
It's like happy news usually and like yeah.
Yeah.
And so what they wanted to have brides come on and get married live on the show. And so they did like a contest thing and they had people like submit their stories and submit like why do you want to get married on live television on Valentine's Day, and they chose 3 gals. And then one of the shops that we like partner with had reached out to us and they're like, "Hey, we're the ones supplying the dresses for the show. Would you guys be able to provide alterations just as like a good outlet, like a good advertising outlet?"
Yeah.
So it was unpaid, and we took 3 dresses and completely altered them over the weekend.
Yeah.
It was
Like
wild.
it wasn't just alterations. It was like, oh, you want a new neckline? Okay, let's whip this out.
Yeah, it was like full coverage, full modesty dress to like basically strapless with like a spaghetti strap type
Yeah.
vibe. So I do it again? Probably not. But it was really fun. And the brides that we worked with for it were so just like just such beautiful humans.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, one of the gals, she's like been fighting cancer for like 9 years, and her fiance have just been putting off the wedding for her treatments. And she's like,
Yeah.
I just want to marry him like before I die, basically.
Oh
And
my
so we
gosh.
were like, oh, she was so sweet, so perfect to work with. And so like they were very worth it and all so perfect, but
Yeah.
it was a lot to do.
I'm sure that was a lot of work and a lot of pressure. Like I
Mhm.
feel, yeah, like, ooh.
It's gonna be on TV.
Yeah, my friend Rachel is a huge fan of Love is Blind, and so she
Oh,
wants to be a seamstress for Love is Blind, which okay, yeah, like actually that needs to like we need to improve the alterations department on that show. But
oh,
I
is it
feel like that is so
terrible?
much pressure too because it's like anything where you just have the short time frame, there's eyes on it. It's like, ooh, the
Yeah.
stress of the production. But
Yes.
like you said, it was like probably a really cool experience for your team too, because you all worked on it like
Yeah.
together. Yeah, that's super cool. And yeah, you got that clout. You were on New Day or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Happy news. Good
Happy news. Good things, Utah.
things. Good things, Utah. Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into consignment. I'm really excited about this because I've heard this like it's not necessarily a trend yet, but I'm hearing it kind of pop up. There are a couple ladies like in our membership who have currently have consignment or they're thinking about
Yeah.
adding consignment,
Cool.
but then it like blows up like way faster than people anticipate. I don't know if that was like your experience, but I want to hear about like what inspired you to start the consignment and like the shift going from like being a service provider to being like now in retail, you know?
Yeah.
And it seems like both have been really successful. So You're a great candidate to talk about it.
Oh, that's very nice. Lady Love is the name of our consignment store, and I don't even know if that's the right name because they're all sample sale dresses. So they've
Okay.
never been worn. And I feel like a lot of people come in with the idea that consignment means it's been worn and owned before. Is that
Yeah.
true?
I just think it's like consignment is something that somebody else sells and you both get like portions of what I think, you know what I mean? Because
That's
there's
my
consignment,
definition as
all
well.
different kinds of consignment things, but
Yeah.
probably people just have an image in their heads when it comes to wedding gowns of
Yeah.
it's been used. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay, that was my, like, mental definition of it as well, but I've been, like, with clients trying to avoid that word because I'm
Yeah.
like, they're gonna think it's been altered. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we started it, like, almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago
Oh
probably,
wow, that flew
and
by.
so it has been kind of a slow start, and really all it was is we were thinking that we were gonna start a rental shop for brides who have come in and done alterations with us, and then they can rent their dress out after. And so we
Oh.
started collecting that way,
Mhm.
and then we were, like, advertising about it, and we actually had a shop reach out to us, and they were like, "Hey, are you taking consignment dresses? I have 200 dresses that I'd be willing to give you." I know. And we were like, "Yes, that's what we're doing." So it just fell into our lap. And so I was like, "I'm taking a U-Haul to California to go pick up these dresses." And so I, like, booked myself a flight. I flew out, packed the U-Haul by myself with 200
Oh,
dresses,
oh my
drove it back
gosh.
to Utah in 24 hours. I did all this in 24 hours.
Oh my word.
And at the time, I was like, "This is our next big break."
200 free dresses. So it's like, of course, it's gonna be a huge moneymaker. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
And so we were like, "Okay, we're gonna be rental and consignment." And then we had no place to store these 200 dresses, so that's why we had the storage unit in the back.
Yeah.
But we started out with those 200 and we moved into our new shop, and those were all we had for like a second. And then I just started reaching out to shops who were having sample sales and being like,
Mhm.
"Hey, like, we'll take on dresses." And then I went to the bridal show in Chicago.
Oh,
Is not as a vendor, but as a participant and sort of handing out my business cards and
oh
got
my
kicked
goodness.
out.
Oh, you got kicked out?
But girl's gotta shoot her shot, you know? And so, anyway, we've just been, like, trying to connect with more shops.
Wait, I kind of want to hear more of that story because
I didn't even know what to say about it, like, it was so unhinged of me to think that I could just walk in and start handing out my business cards when I did not pay to be a vendor. But
oh my word. Oh my word. Okay, so who told you to leave? How did that unfold?
so
You
initially I was just walking around on the floor, and I was just kind of, like, trying to stop people, like, stop buyers as they were shopping and be like, "Hey, when you're done with your samples, send them our way," type thing,
which
you know?
sounds so innocent. Like, okay.
So innocent, and I was like, "No one's gonna stop me. I look like I'm 15. No one's gonna think twice about me." Anyway, and I, like, looked the part. I, like, looked like I was a buyer, and I was going around looking to buy accessories to have in the store
Sure.
as well, and I was just walking around, and then I decided that there was a more efficient way to do it, and everyone was gonna funnel off to lunch once lunch started being served, and so I was just standing in the doorway that they go through for lunch, and I was like, "Hey, are you a buyer?" And they'd be like, "Yeah," or they'd be like, "No," and so I'd be like, "Okay, no worries," and then if they said that they were a buyer, I'd be like, "Awesome, I'm just gonna give this to you," and they thought it was like their lunch ticket, and so everyone was taking them. And so I probably got through passing out like 50 of them, and then this man walked up, and I just got to the point where, like, I could read on the tags whether they were a vendor or a buyer,
Yeah.
and he wasn't a buyer, and so I, like, passed him, and then he came back out, and he's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Rachel, I'm with Love Bridal," and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm just handing out my business cards," and he's like, "You can't be doing this." And I'm like, "Oh, shoot, okay, I'll leave." And he's like, "No, you can't be doing this." And I was like, "Okay, that's all right, I'll go." And he's like, "You can't be." He just, like,
Oh
kept
my
going.
gosh. You're like, I'm not gonna take them back. Like they already have my card, so just let me go. And I'll have
Yeah.
a lunch too. Thank you.
And also, like, I know that this is, like, kinda shady, and so if you tell me once, like, I'm not gonna try to keep doing it, you know, like, I'm not trying to get banned for life. And so
This is why didn't we open story? Okay, and like your street cred in my mind just Definitely elevated. Like you are in it to win it. Like no matter the cost, you're
We're just out
in
here hustling.
Chicago.
And so I just threw my business cards in my bag and said, I've got all the veil contacts I need. And so I just walked around Chicago, went to the museum, bided my time, moved my
Oh
flight
my
up a day and left.
That is like the best story. Oh my goodness. Like yeah, it probably was a little bit like cringy and sweaty at the time, but now
Oh yeah.
it's like the best story ever.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I
so
left
that
and I
was
was
part of
like,
the consignment growth.
yeah. Yes,
But
yes,
did it
yes.
work? Like did anybody there call you?
I think we got like one contact from it, but then I just ended up, we had some email contacts that I ended up sending some messages to, and we've gotten some people that way. So, and I also took 2 more like U-Haul trips out. So I took a
Mhm.
U-Haul trip out last summer to Colorado and visited 7 shops, picked up from all 7 of them, just packed
Whoa.
them in the U-Haul, drove them home. And
Wow.
then my dad said, "I don't want you going on those trips anymore." And so he went with me on my next one. Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and then dropped back down into Utah. So
Mhm.
we now have like 22 shops that we have consignment from.
Wow.
And so we
And
have a
it's
very
probably
limited.
nice like that because I know I'm thinking of my like feeder stores. There's one in particular, and they're like, I don't want to give my dresses to our local consignment.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So, like, we've had conversations about that. So it's probably more like she would probably be more willing to give like you her dresses as opposed to like people who are trying to sell it like literally in the same town. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
Totally.
a little
And
disconnect.
we've had a similar issue here. We have one local shop that we get them from, and it's like
Mhm.
once they have 1 or 2, because they sell off the rack. Once they have 1 or
Yeah.
2 of their samples left and they're not selling well, they'll send them over here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. When did you see that actually turning a profit? Like moving from like the storage in the back to like, oh, people are buying these things and it's worth it to take the U-Haul trips.
I decided that we're not taking any more U-Haul trips. The last couple
Mhm.
shops that we've paired with have just shipped their stuff to us.
Yeah.
And we tell them like shipping is on you. We pay a pretty hefty commission to them. We pay a 60% commission.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's like worth it to them to ship them out.
It
And
is.
we
Yeah.
tell them like if you ever want it back, you just pay for shipping. We send it right back to you. Like it's really at
Mhm.
no cost to you to keep them here.
Yeah.
But really just this year it started to kind of become profitable just because we poured a lot of money into it last year because
Yeah.
like needing the bigger space was for Lady Love.
Are
We
your
had to
alterations and consignment, is that in the same building?
yes.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we built a website and spent probably like 160 hours photographing all of our pre-existing inventory to put on our website and
Gosh.
then doing SEO for all of our items as well. Uh, and so we're just now getting to the point where we're like kind of like breaking even on the investment that we put into it last
Yeah.
year and kind of starting to turn a profit.
Yeah. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's awesome. That's really exciting because I could just imagine what last year was like all of
Yeah.
the money investment and the time and like, oh my goodness, like the building up. And then it is nice to get to a point where you're like, okay, it's kind of evening out. So
Yeah.
for people who don't necessarily have a space yet, but they're thinking of consignment, like give us a couple tips of if you're thinking of getting into the consignment scene, okay, don't show up in Chicago or like don't go to a bridal market. But
Yeah.
beyond that lesson.
I don't know if I'm in a position to be giving good advice on it yet
Yeah.
because I feel like word of mouth has been the heftiest like driver of people coming in.
Yeah.
We've worked really hard on getting Google reviews up. I think if you don't have the space, that's the biggest holdup. Like we did need more space for our alterations anyway, but we
Mhm.
definitely didn't need to like quintuple our size.
Yeah.
But the space that we moved into was only like $400 more a month than the 800 square foot space that we
Oh
were in
wow.
because we chose a very like industrial space. So it's not a beautiful space by any
Mhm.
means, but for what we do, I feel like it works.
Get the job done. Yeah.
But I don't know that I'm in the position to be giving
That's fair.
phenomenal
Yeah.
advice.
What skills did you have to pick up that you're like, "Oh, I didn't have to consider this with alterations, but now I need to kind of pick up these business savvy skills as a
Yeah.
retail operator?"
I think that the dialogue that you have with shoppers is quite different than you have with like
Mm,
alteration clients because they're committed to a dress and you're
mhm.
making changes to it to make it exactly what they want.
Yeah.
Whereas like I found that with shoppers, I was giving way too much alteration input where I'm like, I know exactly what you want. We can do this, and it'll be exactly what you want.
Yeah.
But if they can't visualize it, it's never gonna work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just had to kind of like shut my mouth And honestly, we're super hands off. Like we don't really consult with them a ton. Like we
Mhm.
let them choose their dresses, we let them try it on, and then we pop in and we're like, "Do you have any alterations questions? Do you have any questions on price?" But we kind of let them run it themselves
Yeah.
because they generally end up coming to the same conclusion whether you're helping them or not. And
Mm.
if they
Mhm.
come to the conclusion on their own, they're far more likely to be happy with it than
Right.
if they feel like you talked you into it.
Yeah,
Feel
yeah,
like
yeah. And that makes sense because we have a consignment chain in our area and they work the same way where it's like you set an appointment, they welcome you, they give you your room, and then they're like, okay, bye, here are your sizes, you know? And I went there with one of my friends who's getting married a few years ago, and I was like, what is happening? Where's our stylist? And it's like, oh, that doesn't happen here. You know what I mean? But then like it also it just made sense for like that business. You know what I'm
and
saying?
the price
Like
point that
model.
you're getting,
That's it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah, you're not buying like $3,000 dresses, so you don't get $3,000 stylists.
totally. 100%.
Well, good for you. And I'm really excited to see how you're going to feel like 3 years from now because I feel like the past couple of years you put in so many hours and like effort and like how do we grow like your reach has expanded so much. So then it's like, okay, what are the dividends going to be a few years from now? So
Yeah.
hopefully like the hardest part's behind you and now it's like, okay, let's kind of see, let's write it out, see what happens. So how do your two brands complement each other? Do you almost automatically alter all the dresses that are purchased from Love Lovely
Lady
Lady Lady Love?
Love. Yeah, it's pretty much a given that we'll do alterations on it, and we do give them a good deal on it,
Oh,
especially because
cool.
we're trying to build Lady Love right now.
Yeah.
We've started to kind of stray away from that just because we've had more traction with Lady Love, so we're less inclined to like give away our services for basically free.
Yeah.
But they work really well together because everybody here has such an intense alteration knowledge that if you
Mhm.
have any questions, we'll tell you if it's possible or not, and
Yeah.
we're not gonna steer you in the wrong direction like some consultants end up doing. I don't think it's always intentional, but some consultants just promise the world and they don't know what's
Yeah.
actually possible.
Yeah. I get that. Okay, so say if people or seamstresses want to tap into like a different pocket of the wedding industry. So it could be like consignment or like I sometimes feel like I almost want to be a wedding planner because that'd be so much fun. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like we know the language, like whatever. And I love planning parties, so it's like, why not? But like, so for people who are thinking of just adding something to their portfolio, whatever it would be, I know this is like a really vague question, but like thinking of like the mindset shift that you had to take to like add
Mhm.
this additional thing, like what advice would you give somebody who's in the position of like, maybe I'll add this to my offerings
Yeah.
that is totally different than alterations?
I would suggest doing something that is the post alterations phase because we've had to attract a completely different subset of clients because we're trying to get them a step before us, and I would do
Hmm.
something that is a step after you. So, like
That is
or
so smart.
grow with the same step. If it's like you're selling shapewear, you're selling shoes, or you're doing gown preservation, or you're turning dresses into like a big thing here is like christening dresses out of your
Oh
wedding
yeah,
dress.
yeah. Hmm.
Just something like after the alteration step, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
That would be a much easier transition because you can advertise for it
They're
and
already
everybody
your
that
market. Yeah.
they already trust you, they already know you.
Yeah. That is so smart because you're right. If you were you'd have to change everything, like your voice, because
Yeah.
you're trying to bring in people that are like maybe not even engaged yet or like early on in the process.
Yeah.
I mean, even as it is, it's hard enough to get brides to pre-book like early on in the process, right?
Yeah.
To think about like reaching people even like farther beyond that is like, okay. So that kind of limits things, but that's okay because at least it's realistic. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how much work do you want to put in? Yeah. Okay. So what do you do for fun besides sewing? Like, let's think about life outside of business stuff. Like, what's a fun weekend for you?
I really, really love sewing. I'll come in on weekends and do personal projects. I've also been trying to grow my personal Instagram, so I've been doing a lot of like special projects for that. But if
Oh,
we're not doing that, I like to go and like play some volleyball, play some pickleball.
I could see you as a volleyball player, actually.
I've got the
Yeah.
height for
Yeah.
it. And
I
yeah,
actually hate volleyball because I always feel like I'm gonna get hit in the head. And I took volleyball like in college as like a whatever, like a PE credit, like my senior year. And I think I got like a C minus. Like it was
oh
like,
my gosh.
because like I just like showed up, like I would roll out of bed, like show up and like whatever.
Yeah.
And there were quizzes and stuff. It was awful. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty stumpy. So it's like nobody wants me on the team. And like we'll have when the youth group comes over, my husband sets up a net and it's like, you don't even want, like they are like, oh, play. I'm like, you don't want me. And then I get out there and then they're like, oh no. And then they realize they actually don't want me because it's like they don't even know where to move. It just is very stressful. But my sister's really into pickleball. And so she taught me how to play pickleball. And I'm like trying to get into
It's
that.
so fun. And
Yeah.
it's like low cardio effort, which I'm all about. Like I'm
And
about
she's
like
like addicted. Like she has like pickleball earrings and like a
oh
necklace. Like her husband got her like this super nice like pickleball like necklace for Valentine's Day. I'm like, okay. And she does championships and stuff. I'm like, okay. I've gone like a couple
wait.
times just to like whatever. We're in the same like music nerd community. So
Okay.
I've played with like other music nerds. So like the pressure's really low to be like sporty. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, but I'm impressed that you're like so sporty and coordinated and you sew. I was like,
I'm not like so sporty coordinated. I just enjoy it. Let's not get super high expectations. But it's funny that you mentioned college though, because I do want to say that I failed every sewing class I took in college.
really?
Yeah, every
How?
single one. Literally, the second semester was an intermediate sewing class. I think because I hated the class.
Oh,
I think I just didn't do the projects. But like there was a
oh.
project where we had to do hoodies and I did it probably 50% of the way. And I brought it in and I was like, this is my final product. And she was like, it looks terrible. And I'm like, yes, it looks terrible. I threw it away in the trash in the room and then left. And then the next semester I came in for pattern making and literally the TA walks out of the back room with my hoodie in her hand. And she's like, Dr. Ba, somebody left this last semester in the trash can. Do you think they want it? And Dr. Ba turns to the class, is this anybody's? And I'm like, and then I just walked it outside of the class and threw it away outside of the class on the way out of that.
You're like, why did you keep it this whole time?
It's literally in the trash can.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, somebody thought it looked good enough to pick up out of the trash. So
Yeah, someone's like, they're gonna want to finish this. No. Anyway, but I failed every sewing class, so there's some hope for people if they are also failing.
where do you see yourself in 3 years? I already kind of alluded to that, but where do you see yourself in 3 years?
That's tough. I think there's a couple different directions that I am looking to expand Heming and Fitz, and I don't really know which direction because alterations is not the end goal for me.
Oh.
I kind of built it as a means to an end to be able to do more creative work, and so I wanted
Is
to
that
be
where the personal Instagram is coming into play?
yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. We really want to start a bridal line, me and some of the gals here. And so we will be starting some work on that next year. But I
This is such a
think
cool time for that too, because like the indie designer scene is
love
popping.
it. Yes.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's such a cool place to be right now. And so that would be probably where I would hope to see us in 3 years is with our own bridal line. And maybe
Wow.
take a step back from alterations or just taking on as many clients as we need to pay for the bridal line.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really cool. And that's so fun that like you guys are close enough to like you can create that together. Like you've
Yeah.
built it, Heming and Fitz together, and now it's like, okay, the next phase, what's that gonna be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We walk in all together.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, final question. What is your best kept secret as a business owner in the wedding
Oh,
industry, as the seamstress and owner of all the things?
it's
I
be
think I know what
aggressive.
your secret is, but you can go and then I'll
Oh,
tell you what I think it is.
okay. I'm interested to know what you think it is. But I think it's just like be loud, be aggressive, but don't be obnoxious. I think.
There is a fine line because like
Yeah.
you're like loud and fun, but you do not cross the obnoxious line. So
Oh,
I
that's
tell you
very
if you
nice
did.
of
You wouldn't be here if you did.
you.
I think also yours. Oh wait, you can develop your secret, and then I'll talk.
I don't know if there's much more to it than that. I just think like be willing to take big steps because even with like I'm building a flower wall with my fiance right now, and even in building the flower wall, I'm like it's gonna pay for itself because we're using it for the business, for photo shoots, and for our wedding. And I'm like, but we're also gonna rent it out. And in my head, I'm like,
Ooh.
no one's ever gonna want to rent this. People can rent it for $150 elsewhere, but the other ones are anyway. I just like already see myself questioning that. And it's such a small thing that I'm like putting my neck out for. And I
Mhm.
feel like people just question themselves all the time. But if it's something that people are already asking for, like if there's already a market for it, just go for it, shoot your shot, and try it for like at least 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also the secret that I notice in you is you don't take yourself too seriously and you're willing to do just to try things, which you kind of already are
Yeah.
touched on. But it's like I think when people have like this ego that they just it's like this heavy weight that they carry around with them.
Yeah.
It just really limits you because then it's like, okay, yeah, you don't want to take the risks or like everybody's watching me if I fail. Like people aren't really watching us, I think, as much as we hope that they would, you know?
Yeah.
And like it's like things are just really fun and flexible for you. And it's like so obvious to hear that. And I'm so excited for this episode to drop because like I think we need more of that of like keeping it light, people. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there can just be a lot of like intensity. And yeah, like you want to take your business super seriously and like do well and like serve your clients well, but also like the levity that you bring to the scene is just a breath of fresh air. So
Oh,
I think
that
that's
is
what
so nice. Thank you.
yeah. You're very welcome. Yeah.
That's
So
so
that's what
kind.
I hope that's what people like walk away with after this episode is like just keep it light, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it
Well,
light, be happy, be fun, be fresh.
and then get on Be Happy Utah or whatever. Happy morning, Utah.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, tell us where to find you. And then if you don't want us to, I feel like we might be stalking your personal Instagram. So do you just want to like drop that too? Because you might
Drop
as
them
well.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have this
Hemming
text
and
in the notes too, but if you're listening,
okay,
you can just rattle us off.
perfect. The alterations is Heming and Fitz, HEMINGANDFITZ.
Mhm.
Lady Love Bridal is our consignment shop. And then my personal Instagram is She Peter Pants.
Okay. See?
Yes. You never
Okay.
take yourself too seriously. My fiance is like, if you're gonna try and grow it, you should probably change it to something more professional. And I'm like, if I change it to something more professional, I'm gonna be attracting the wrong people.
Oh my gosh.
It's
No, no.
SAGPETER pants. My last name's Peterson. So
Right. Yes. A cute little play on words there.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, just thank you for sharing the story and being open with the funny stories and all the things. So we are really excited and cheering you on over here for like the growth of Lady Love and then whatever's coming up like down the pike in a few years from now.
Well, thank you so much. You like are such a treasure to talk to and just be around. You're so
Okay,
lovely.
we gotta hang out. Okay, so we're gonna plan our coffee date next.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And if you're feeling really generous, leave a review. Thanks, everyone.